Hello everyone, and welcome to the next part of our RPGX training session, where we will go through the different roles in a role play, through the different departments, and how best to excel as our peer in that department, as well as some handy tips that will make your performance in these different areas better, so that they can add more to the plot, especially when you may not be at the center of it. We're going to start with the most important position in a roleplay, and that is the role of the CO, or Commanding Officer. As we discussed in Part 1, the CO is the game master of the plot, the one who determines where the plot is going, and guides that plot from beginning to resolution. Also, a CO is very much responsible for making sure that there aren't any disruptions to the plot, and we'll go over that later. But first, let's get set up for the role of a CO. We're going to bring down the menu, and the console rather, and type in class, command. I am in command class now. We're going to name, that's caret1, CO Jensen, and model Culhane for me, main, default, and then if there were anyone on the server, I would say tab. Then I would type in rank captain, and voila, I'm ready to go. Let's head off to the bridge. You may notice, Jensen, wow, the graphics are much better now than they were in the previous training session. To which I would reply, oh yes, it would be. Well, I do say, in my last training session, I was in fact on my laptop, and now, of course, I am on my gaming computer with most superior graphics. Yes, quite, so don't freak out. Anyway, now that we've gotten a bit of insanity out of the way, we are on the bridge. Now, let's talk about being CO. Firstly, I really encourage people, especially newer members, not to take the role of CO of an RP without having a plot idea clearly in mind. It doesn't have to be completely drawn out from beginning and resolution, but you should know basically where you want to go with a plot and have the basics already down. I very strongly encourage players also to have a little outline of their plot available on paper. Sometimes when you're CO, things get really crazy. And especially in large RPs, and it's kind of hard to really know, really have the stream in your mind when there are 10 things going on at once. So having it written down can be a great help. In terms of winging it as a CO, you can do that, but I generally recommend that only more seasoned RPers do that. Claw, for instance, is very great at doing that, but Claw is a very exceptional RPer. Let's talk about the plot in the middle of your RP. You always, as I said before, you need to be mindful of plot jacking. As we discussed in the first unit, plot jacking is when someone adds a major element into the plot without getting the CO or your permission. And this could be, again, anything as major as, oh my gosh, whoop, cool, breach, to as little as, I am giving the crew plague, or this ship is destroyed, etc. And it's really your responsibility as the CO to, one, call out the plot jacking by PMing the member and asking them to stop and telling them what they did wrong, and to clear all major plot changes through you, even if you want to incorporate that major change into your RP. And secondly, if you don't want to incorporate that plot jacking into your RP, then please say via OOC chat, please disregard what was said. Obviously, you probably would be more specific than that, depending on the situation, but basically just let everyone on the server know in OOC chat that that wasn't a part of the plot and they should ignore it. If you don't say that immediately, people can get confused about where your plot is going, and that can disrupt a perfectly excellent RP. Alright, let me go over a few little handy tips on being a CO and being in the center chair. Firstly, use combat sparingly. You know, there have been thousands of Star Trek episodes, and only a fraction of them, maybe 10 or 20%, involve combat at all, much less as a focus. Now, that's not to say that combat can't be in an RP and be done well, quite the contrary. But if you ever have an attack in your RP, you should be able to answer the questions who, what, when, where, why, how. You know, if your RP doesn't, by its resolution, answer those questions about the purpose of this attack, then it really doesn't have a good place in the plot, and it's just very distracting. Always be sure that if you have a combat, especially a combat-heavy arc, that other crew members could answer those who, what, when, where, why, how questions. On that same vein, intruders. We don't see that as much, I think, anymore in roleplays, but it still happens. Where you have the... Oh no! There are intruders attacking! Get your face off! Face off! Face off! Pew 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 pew! Etc. Now that's not to say that intruders, again, can't be a part of a normal RP. However, it has to be handled very delicately and with care. Again, just as I said on combat, make sure you can answer the who, what, when, where, why, and how on the intruders. Also, please remember that on the serious server, we have a no-frag rule, and that no-frag rule applies at all times, including during an intruder situation. So you shouldn't be fragging each other, even if you're, like, simulating a combat on the ship. Rather, you should be simulating your fire by intentionally missing. Let's say... Oh, let me place an entity here. Never mind, I'm not an admin class. I don't want to show you the admin password. Ha ha ha. Let's say that there's an imaginary person in the turbo lift, and that's them. We want to aim away from them and RP the firefight. And we can indicate that we've been hit or they've been hit by using the me command, like me is hit. Oh no, etc. Also, you know, you don't always have to have a situation where an intruder is a playing character. You can always have an NPC or non-playing character boarding situation, and just pretend that they are in fact there and react accordingly. That can be done, and that you can usually be done with less of a problem emerging. Really, in terms of when to have intruders and not, I think it's best to play it by ear as a CO. If you have a plot with very solid RPers who you know can do a good job without noobing, great, go for it. If you have a crew that's a bit more iffy in their abilities, I would recommend holding it off, and do more NPC, or have it on a small scale with only a few people that you can trust. Alright, next up, conferences. I think this is one of the lost arts of role-playing. Back when I used to CO, like, every single plot, yeah, that's been some years ago, I would have a briefing in virtually all of my plots at the very beginning of the episode, more or less. And having a conference is very useful in not only laying out the foundations of your plot, but also making sure that everyone, especially all the departments, have a specific goal that they need to achieve in order to resolve the plot. The biggest problem as a CO, the biggest difficulty, especially in larger RPs, is keeping everyone engaged in the plot, and having everyone feel like they are contributing in some way to the plot's resolution. Because if someone doesn't feel like they're contributing to the plot's resolution, then that person's not going to enjoy the roleplay very much. So this is an excellent opportunity to do that, and to give out assignments that will go to resolving the plot, you know, in the episode. Now, we could have an episode, say, delivering medical supplies to a colony in the middle of a war zone. The two obvious departments that come to mind are the medical department and the security department. Medical department, obviously prepping the supplies, and the security department in anticipating and preparing for potential combat and threats to the ship. You might not know exactly what to do with, say, the chief science officer and the helmsman, though. But be creative and think a little bit outside the box, and how can they contribute to the plot? For the chief science officer, you might say, well, CSO, I want you to do two things. I want you to, one, always keep a very close eye on long-range sensors for any enemies, or any sort of indication that we may encounter a hostile force. And two, I want you to go to astrometrics with the helmsman and start looking at places that we could hide if we run into trouble and we need just to go somewhere until things blow over so that we're not detected. And you can involve the helmsman in that, in having several courses in mind and plotted, and providing a thoughtful analysis of where we can go to point A, B, or C, or D if we need to. And that keeps them involved. The engineering and ops department can prepare for combat by making sure all systems are going great. Great time for maintenance traveling to this medical colony here. Why don't we just get some routine stuff out of the way that we've been putting off for so long? Excellent crew life potential. Also, make sure that the ship is in combat-ready fashion. Make sure shields and weapons are calibrated and raring to go. And there you go. You have given each department, basically, an assignment that they can carry out through the plot's resolution. And they also better know what the plot actually is, which is great, and will help everyone feel more in the raft on the stream of your plot. Next thing to keep in mind, try to keep things within canon, within reason. Now, you don't need to be 100% spot on with canon. We're not canon authoritarians. However, do remember a few certain things. Firstly, the Borg are pretty much gone. Secondly, the Dominions are friends with the Federation. And 3, the Romulans are on good terms with the Federation as well. Now, that's not to say that you can't have any plots with maybe Borg, Dominion, or Romulans, maybe even opposed to the Federation, but you have to creatively answer the question of why they are acting against you. For instance, a long time ago, I did an arc about a rogue faction within the Tal Shiar that was rebelling against the Empire over its relations with the Federation. And that was a very long arc. And I got away with it because I properly explained what was going on and made it an essential aspect of the conflict and ultimately the resolution. So just keep in mind the bounds of the Star Trek universe. You can bend here and there, but remember, this is Star Trek roleplay, and there are some things that are in canon, and if you want to overcome them, you should be creative about it. And remember the rule I said earlier about answering the who, what, when, where, how, why, and how? That's a good rule of thumb for any RP. Alright, nextly, not every plot has to end in one RP. I think this is also something that's been a bit missing from roleplays in general nowadays. Some RPs are just so full of content and have just such a difficult conflict, which is good, that it can't be resolved in the span of, say, an hour to an hour and a half. And having a two-parter, or even more occasionally, is fine. And if the plot is especially good, the people will come back to it. So don't be afraid to two-part things. And remember that your RP should really not exceed more than an hour to an hour and a half. 2 hours, absolute maximum. Once you pass 2 hours, it doesn't matter how good the plot is. The people are just going to be very tired and are going to start losing interest in the plot and are just not going to really be contributing. So you don't want to have a 6 or 7 hour RP. I know that sounds silly, but we've had some maybe not quite that long, but pretty close. Ultimately, the golden rule, always make sure everyone has something they can do during an RP. Now, more experienced role players who have been around the block for several years will know how to handle themselves, when they aren't at the center of the plot, but not everyone's a veteran role player. And you as a CO have to be very, very sensitive to making sure that people are involved in the plot, even if that means for people in junior positions just to PM like the COS saying, hey, can you give the security officer blah 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 something to do. So make sure to do your best to incorporate everyone into the plot and not to leave someone idle for too long. And as we'll proceed in this course, we will discuss in greater detail some things to do in various departments when you aren't at the center of the plot, but we will get to that in the next video. Now, before I sign off, this is the part of the Academy training session where I'm going to tell you what to do to tell Jensen, me, that you in fact have watched these videos. Please PM Jensen with the following word, anteater. Again, that's anteater. And then I will know you have in fact taken this course. Now, if you've taken this If you've gotten to this point and you still have more videos to go, please watch the other videos. They'll be very beneficial to you, especially as we go down for the breakdown of departments. So please don't end here if you have more to go, or I will be most displeased, and I shall in fact take your spleen. Alright, well I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you have any questions, just PM myself or any other member of the Academy faculty. See you on the other side.